All right, so what we're looking at here is we have a table, right? Anytime you see a table and it's asking what equation, what you need to think is functions, okay? Because we learn about different functions. It's a big part of 10th grade, 11th grade math for sure. And it's a big part of the SAT is just applying different functions and patterns to the equations that go with them. So functions. Now, what do I mean by functions is, I mean, we should start immediately be thinking, there's really three main ones that we talk about. The first and the most important by far is linear, then quadratic. And then we also learned about, and I know you'd learn about in 11th grade, exponential. So it's really one of those three. Exponential. Okay. And we got to figure out which one is which. Now, how do what's the basic thing here? Well, linear, the pattern for the y's should be adding or subtracting, right? Quadratic is whenever we have something that's being squared. And then exponential is whenever we're taking something, let's say like to the x power. So exponential will be weird because it's really going to be multiplying. It's really about multiplication, okay? So now, okay, this could get really complicated because there's a whole lot of stuff with these three. Most of the time for the SAT, it's not going to be the most complicated stuff. I haven't even looked at this problem yet. I can almost guarantee that it's probably going to be linear. Okay, it almost always is. And if it's not, then it's going to be exponential in this case. A table like this in quadratic, it is not going to be that because that's a really hard type of problem with a table to find an equation. It's almost definitely going to be linear, maybe exponential. So how do you figure out? Well, you got to look at the y's. What's the pattern going on from the y's? Well, okay, there's fractions. Okay, we freak out when we see fractions. I said this in the last video. The SAT loves to give you things that make it a little bit harder looking when it's actually not really very much harder. What are you doing from 7/5 to 11/5? These are all over 5. That makes these fractions significantly easier than they could be. So from 7/5 to 11/5, well, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, so that's 4. So if you add it, 4/5, right, you would get 11/5. And then so what happens here from 11/5 to 15/5? Well, if you added 4/5, you get 15. And it keeps going, right? 4/5. What pattern was that? Was that linear, quadratic, exponential? Well, it's linear. Why? Because it's adding. It's adding the same thing every single time. So we know that we're talking about linear. That was the first hurdle here is what are we talking about, linear or quadratic or exponential? This is an exponential because see how it has the x squared? It's not exponential. We just figured that out. This is quadratic. See how it has the squared? Not x squared, sorry, to the x power. This has x squared. That's quadratic. It's not quadratic. So we already know that our answer is either going to be C or B. Okay. Then it comes down to what do we know about the linear equations? Well, what do we know about linear stuff? The first thing that you just have to know is your y equals mx plus b. Okay, and you need to know that your m is your slope and your b is your y-intercept. Okay, what do we know about slope? Well, slope is the change in y over change in x. That little triangle just means change in. Don't get caught up in that. So change in y over change in x. The y-intercept, that occurs where your x equals 0. And we'll get into that. Maybe that will come up, maybe it won't. So the difference that I see here is that, okay, they have opposite y-intercepts, and they also have different slopes. We've come really close to finding the slope already, but we have to pay attention to that x, okay? Because it's not 4/5, and you can see that neither of your answers have 4/5 as the slope. The x is not changing by 1s. The x is changing by 2s, okay? Well, with a fraction now, this could get complicated. And you could do it this way. I could teach you how. It would involve a little bit of math that I know I never taught you. Because if you think about your change in y over change in x, what you'd be really looking at is your change in y was 4/5, and your change in x was 2. That's called a complex fraction, and that's a little bit weird to deal with. Hold on, the video is about to cut out, so there's going to be 2 videos for this. So I'll start on the next video.